Sorry, one more second.
Do we have highlights or just an open?
You are looking live.
Can Shockey hear me?
Yes. We're also live.
Do we have highlights or just an open?
All right, here we go, guys.
KJR-AM and KJR-FM HD2. Seattle! Available everywhere with the iHeartRadio app. Now #1 in podcasting. Sports Radio 950 KJR, an iHeart radio station.
This is the 12th Man Postgame Show, powered by Real Steel. Find yours. Visit your local steel dealer today. On your home for the 12th Man and the NFL. Seattle Sports Radio 950 KJR.
Slickhawk, we all have rules that we follow in life, right? Some people are better at following rules than other people. I find myself that I've been, as you probably might imagine, I've been a pretty solid rule follower my life. Not a guy that likes to venture out too far from
you color inside the boxes. Is what you do. You color inside the lines.
So it's like maybe easier for me to follow certain rules. Well, there is a rule that if Seattle Seahawks fans haven't figured out yet that they need to follow after 9 seasons of Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll at the helm here, I don't know when they're ever going to follow it. And that is never, ever, ever give up on this football team. Never give up on this football team, because they're going to prove you wrong way more times than they're going to prove you right. And we saw it again on Twitter all first half long, man. 4-1. Well, this game's over. And I'm like, man, you just haven't watched a lot of Seattle Seahawks football, have you?
Look, man, 5-0. I'm going to say that they had no business winning that game. I truly believe they had no business winning that game.
Great.
But Russell Wilson, at the end, the defense comes up with a big stop that when it mattered the most. I didn't think they could do it. I didn't think they would do it. I was scared crapless when they lined up to go for it on 4th and 1. I didn't think there was any chance this defense, who hadn't stopped that rushing attack all day long, was going to get a stop. They get the stop. Russell Wilson marches down the field. They endure a DK drop in the end zone. He comes back once again, is the hero. Russell Wilson, MVP of this league. You can't win in the first quarter. I'm going to say it. You can't win in the second quarter. You can't win in the third quarter. But Russell Wilson in the fourth quarter is the best quarterback in the history of the league. We're 5-0.
5-0 for the first time ever, Slickhawk. And you think about this much maligned defense. They have won 2 football games with a 1-yard stop, have they not?
Yes.
They have stopped Cam Newton at the 1-yard line, and they have stopped Alexander Mattison from getting 4th and 1 and ending a football game. This much maligned defense, when the you-know-what hits the fan in the biggest plays of the games, not the other 79 plays they had to defend, and that's how many they defended before that play. 79 plays they had to defend. On the 80th play, the most important play of the game, they got the stop. And what I thought was brilliant, what I thought was so apropos, was that the guy that got the stop was probably the guy that was getting killed on Twitter more than any single player on the Seahawks defense the whole day long. Mr. Cody Barton. Just getting destroyed all game long by Seahawks Twitter. And he comes up and makes the biggest play of the game.
Well, it would help that, the stuff wouldn't hit the fan, the you-know-what, if they weren't throwing the you-know-what at the fan all game long. Maybe so that they could help themselves out every once in a while. Maybe by not doing that, they could help out my personal health. My cardiologist says I got to stop doing these things because I can't take it anymore. But you're absolutely right. Somehow, some way. I mean, look, this isn't the defense of old in terms of you used to have Earl Thomas and Cam Chancellor and every blade of grass, and you get to the 1-inch line and you'd have Earl or Cam knock it out of somebody's hand and make that play. This isn't those guys, and we'll never mistake these guys for those guys. But something happens when they absolutely have to have it, that they dig deep somewhere, somehow, some way, and they make the play. They did it again tonight. You said it, second time this year that's happened. They put the ball back in their MVP quarterback's hands. He didn't fail at the absolute last moment when he had to have it, and they come through and win.
And in a game, Slick, where they had to create all of their own emotion. I mean, and we saw about as flat a football team as you could possibly see in that.
Tell you what. Mm-hmm.
I mean, they came into that stadium like there was nobody in that stadium. And we all know that it would have been, a much different looking first half, particularly defensively. I mean, we've seen the Hawk offense struggle at home in the first half.
Yeah.
We've rarely seen the Hawk defense really struggle at home in the first half when the fans are there, when they're getting those guys juiced up. And for 30 minutes, there was no juice in the tank whatsoever. And, Collinsworth made a great call there. He said, that hit by Ryan Neal that knocked Dalvin Cook out of the football game on the sideline, it was like something just snapped there. And Collinsworth called it at the very beginning because he can obviously see what we can't see on TV. He said, man, I just looked at that sideline and they are high-fiving. They are pumping fists. He said the momentum just turned in this ball game on that play. And boy, oh boy, was he right. Because, hey, without that next 4 minutes of football, we don't see Russell Wilson with 5 seconds left winning the football game.
Well, you felt it. I mean, and it sucks that it takes an injury on the other team or whatever it is to kind of jack up your team, but I don't know if they felt like now things have to change. Now we have a fighting chance, whatever it is, because Dalvin Cook was eating them for lunch and dinner and dessert all first half long, and it was spilling into the second half. He goes out with that injury early in the third quarter, and then there's that glimmer of hope, and then it just takes a couple plays snowballing to build that momentum and that belief and everything. And the way they were scoring there in the third quarter, I mean, it reminded me, I think it was 2001, 2002, whatever it was, where Sean Alexander had those 5 touchdowns. It was against the Vikings on a Sunday night. They scored 4 touchdowns in a minute 28 back then. Had that same kind of feel. KJ Wright plucking the ball out of the air. I thought they were going to get another turnover when on the kick return too, because he just hammers him and knocked him into next week. But that obviously the energy changed when Dalvin Cook went out of the game. They were able to get just enough juice out of that to be able to put the points on the board to give themselves the lead and have a little bit of cushion for that offense to come back around again once the Vikings kind of sorted their stuff out with Cook being out.
And handed to the defensive staff, Ken Norton and the defensive staff, who also was getting big swings from Seahawks Twitter all first half long, making some adjustments there in the beginning of the third quarter. And we'll talk to Hugh about some of those adjustments, because I think that really noticeable adjustments on the screen on what they were doing in the beginning stages of the third quarter versus what they were doing in the first half of the game. I think we got Hugh ready to roll. Hugh, do you have us right now? Can you hear us?
I can hear you. I'm in a hotel, so I don't know how it sounds. Or everybody good?
Yeah, you sound great. You sound absolutely fantastic. Well, Hugh, before we get in the nuts and bolts, before we get in the breakdown of this thing, just overall thoughts again of now what has to be the front runner, the MVP, going the length of the field to win this football game.
Well, I don't understand the impetus to talk about the MVP this early. To me, when they've done it in week 8, I've always thought we're way ahead of the game. But I get it. If the hometown kid is the favorite, then we keep driving that theme. For me, I have the feeling that the game was so unique in that it almost felt like there was 4 games, because the first half, Seattle just absolutely void of the emotion, just as flat as dead flat on both sides of the ball. They were just kind of zombieing their way through it. Then the third quarter, you had that incredible string right there in the middle of the third quarter with under 2 minutes. Seattle was able to get, I think, 3 touchdowns out of that and all those turnovers. So then Seattle rested the momentum away on the heels of the Dalvin Cook injury. And then credit the Vikings at the end of the third quarter and through the majority of the fourth quarter. Kirk Cousins, they manned up. They had their long, 95-yard, 97-yard drive on themselves. And so, the story would have been, could you imagine if you're doing a post-game show in Minnesota, that how resilient the Vikings were to have found a way to reestablish the momentum.
Yes.
And then come back and make the plays they need to make. And then lastly, the fourth game was really just that last drive by Russell Wilson and the Seahawks, to go 95 yards in conditions that are not favorable to throwing the football, either for the quarterback or the receiver, for them to get some just really big plays. I'll just talk about a handful of the plays, guys, in that last drive. You start off from your 5-yard line, again, minute 57 to go. You need a touchdown. And I think it was very key that Russell Wilson scampered on that first down. That was against zone coverage. Usually when you see the quarterback get that much of a run, it's against man-to-man, and they just don't have the quarterback accounted for, or it's a robber and Russell jukes the guy in man-to-man, but he was able to get that in zone. Then the fourth down, the fourth down from the Seattle 23, the 39-yarder to Metcalf up the sideline. I think what's really key about that play is you look at it, was a double move. It was a glance and go. And what's interesting, if you have the onions as a play caller to call a double move on 4th and 10, what happens is that all the defense is locked in on, hey, they're going to want to go just past the sticks. So if you have a route break, like you're going to go to the sticks and just get the 11, 12, 13-yard completion on 4th and 10, now, if you've got a guy as explosive as DK Metcalf, you can run him on a double move and they get the 39 yards out of that. And then I'm just going through the double-digit ones. The 17-yard Russell Wilson getting out of the pocket on 2nd and 10 and connecting with Tyler Lockett for 17 yards. Then he comes back, and now where the Vikings have been blitzing, 2nd and 10 now on the Vikings 21. Now the Vikings go cover 2. They drop everything off a 5 under zone, and Metcalf hits on a slant, a nice little pocket in there for 15 yards. And then Russ threw 2 great out routes, including, of course, the one that DK Metcalf dropped. Tyler Lockett should have caught a bullet, but that 4th down to run a crossing route against man coverage, they're trying to get some type of rub. There just wasn't a lot of separation. So the greatness in that play was Wilson giving some ground, and then he couldn't smoke a ball in like he does. A, because he was giving ground. B, because of the ball conditions. So he had to throw with a trajectory that he would not otherwise want to throw on that. But he was able to put that ball. I mean, he hit a target the size of a dinner plate on that 4th down touchdown in the end zone. And of course, Metcalf, with a guy draped over him, he had to have the confidence to shuck off the drop that he had just had, catch a wet ball with the guy's ripping on his forearms. I mean, that's a hell of a play by the quarterback and the receiver in a game-winning situation. One play for the game, and you had 2 guys execute at the very highest level that their position will allow in this game. Just a sensational football game. That's what started off as a dud.
Slick, it seems like the more difficult the catch for DK Metcalf, the more focused he is and the more ability he has to bring those in, because we've seen the easy balls get dropped. And even the one on the little out route that we thought was a touchdown and turned out to be a drop, I mean, makes a pretty easy catch, but then isn't able to tuck it away and keep it from getting ripped out. I mean, it's unbelievable that he's able to come back now in 2 games, bounce back, retribution for DK, and catch an even tougher ball.
Well, he's so good, and he knows he's good. He knows that he's physically imposing. He knows he's physically better than these cornerbacks. It's in terms of physicality, athleticism, and all that. And so I think that maybe on the easy ones, maybe he gets complacent, he gets in his head, and then he drops it. He's just a foregone. Oh, I'm going to catch the ball, and he doesn't. And I'm not saying that was the case in the end zone. I don't. It was just a great play made by the defensive player to knock that out, and that's going to happen sometimes. I said last week, hey, Pro Bowl receiver, I expect him to make contested catches when he's getting hit. Same thing there, but you're right. He has the resiliency, the mentality to be able to say, okay, I'm going to put that behind me. I'm going to make the next play. I want it to come to me, and I'm going to show these guys I'm not going to let them down despite the mistake I just made. And now twice you've seen it where he comes back and makes the game-winning play.
Hugh, we would be talking about that DK drop, quote unquote drop. If the Seahawks wouldn't have won this game, we would talk about that all week long. What did you see there? Do you think that was the proper call for an incomplete pass?
Well, first of all, on the play, they motioned him over to the sideline, and he lined up in a reduced split. And we were actually here in the hotel room just calling that play. The route is in some offenses call it a bullet route. Some people call it an Oscar route, what have you. So we're using our terminology, and that play was available because you saw the corner was off, and he wasn't necessarily hard outside shade. He was deep enough that because of, again, when I say reduced split, I mean closer to the ball. So when you have that reduced split, then there's a lot of area to break to the sideline. Okay. And there was nobody, what's called a buzz defender. There was no underneath defender from the inside that had the capability to get out underneath it by alignment. So you knew it was just one-on-one, and they didn't respond. The Vikings didn't respond well to motion by Metcalf ultimately aligning in that reduced split. And so, it was a great call by the Seahawks. You're asking about the officials' call. I think it was the right call by the officials. I mean, I think you have to survive. You have to survive the cat. I know that you say survive the ground, and so maybe I'm mixing the terms. And he wasn't going to the ground. I would say he's got to survive that punch out by that defender. And I don't think that he had the ball long enough. I will just say this: if Seattle had been on defense and that had been Shaquille Griffin and he had punched it out of Adam Thielen's hand, and the Vikings, ended up losing, or they didn't have a fourth quarter, a fourth down successful play, and that was the play of the game, we would have said, yeah, Shaq Griffin knocked it out. Mm-hmm. We wouldn't be sitting there saying we lucked out. So I think that they got the right call. And of course, it's easy to say that when you turn around on fourth down and get the win.
Why does it seem easier to go 13 plays, super long drive? I mean, when they've had almost nothing to speak of as far as long drives, I'm looking at this play chart is just ridiculous. I mean, it's like these are the length of drives: 3 plays, 2 plays, 4 plays, 2 plays, 1 play, 7 plays, 4 plays. Those are like the 7 drives leading up to the 13 play drive. But why does it seem easier when there's a minute 45 or 2 minutes left to go on the clock? You're going to pass. Why does it seem easier to get it done? Why did I feel so damn confident? I was. And I know I'm called the snow globe. I'm always optimistic. When they stopped him on 4th and 1, I was like, Russell is going to win this freaking game. I mean, why is it easier to move the ball in that situation?
Well, 3 reasons. Number one, in no particular order. Number one, Russell Wilson just has the more of an inclination to use his legs in those situations. We've been watching him his entire career. I think the first play of the game off the 5-yard line, first play of the drive off the 5-yard line was emblematic of that. That's not something that he'll normally do, just scamper for 17 yards on 1st and 10 with the zone defense. He might move around and try and make a play like he did with Chris Carson on that interception. He may check it down, what have you, but he's not looking to scamper. In these situations with 2 minutes to go, he is eager to use his leg. It's like, if you go ahead, dare me, invite me to do it. So I think there's an aggression that he has. That's number one. Number 2 is the defenders. They're going to play a little softer. They don't want to be the guy that gives up the play to win the game and have their name in the paper on Monday. So they are not going to give up any go routes, any post routes, whatever. They're just naturally deeper. And then number 3 is you're in 4-down territory. And so in other drives, you hit a 4th down, for example. How many plays into that drive did they face a 4th down? I mean, by the 5th play of the drive,
drive was 4th and 10. Yeah, it was
4th and 10. Well, in those other quarters, you'd be punting, but with the game on the line, you get, you're getting 33% more plays in theory, and so there was 4th down on 2 opportunities. Both of the 4th down plays went to Metcalf. And both of them, obviously, because fourth down, by definition, they're game savers. Those were game-saving completions. And of course, the second one was in the end zone.
It was just incredible. You see the confidence from this team as they march down the field. A fatigue factor. Who has more of fatigue factor? I saw David Moore on that pass that Russell missed him. It looked like just kind of a crossing right over the middle of the field. He's making his break, and God, I looked at it on the replay. You'll remember the play. I think they showed the replay of all the receivers' routes, and it just looked like everybody was running at 75% just because they were so dog tired. But does the fatigue advantage still rest with the receivers, or does it rest with the secondary?
It depends on what the secondary is doing. If they're playing zone, if let's say, for example, they played a 5 under 2 deep zone, and the corners are just redirecting the routes, and they're handing them over the safety, and the safeties are lined deep in their half of the field, and they're just kind of backpedaling into a deep area, and the receivers are having to sprint and run clear out type routes over and over again, then that would be a situation where the wide receivers get more fatigued in that situation. Correspondingly, if you are running man-to-man and the offense is doing a good job of getting other guys in, let's say a Freddie Swain or getting a David Moore in, and they're substituting, you're far more likely to have a cohesive substitution on offense in that last 2-minute situation than you would be on defense. On defense, to trade out defensive backs, you just rarely see that. Occasionally, you'll see defense alignment, but teams don't want to change out cornerbacks because of certainly while the ball's going, while the clock is running. But even with a dead ball situation, it's just, hey, you're best guy. You're going to hang out there. You don't see cornerbacks taking powders because of fatigue. But I would say Metcalf took himself out because he had caught that fourth down. He had some other plays where he had to run far down the field. And if you remember the play after Metcalf dropped the Oscar route, the quick out route, they tried to get him on a fade. And if I'm grading Metcalf, I would say that was a very poor route, and he just didn't have the burst and the acceleration. He didn't sell the out route, and it was a fade. And by NFL standards, that was innocuous from the Viking perspective. There was just no threat whatsoever that Metcalf was going to win on that. And you could just see he was dog tired. He pulled himself out, and so he's battling fatigue there. But he cowboyed up on fourth down.
Dick Fain, Slick Hawk, Hugh Breedlove Millen, the 12-man postgame show for the 5-0 Seattle Seahawks, 5-0 for the first time in franchise history, and they gained another game on the San Francisco 49ers. Things looking really, really good for Seattle. A lot to get to when we come back after this quick break, and I know Slick's going to be running through some things on our stream here during the break, and he's also going to be taking some texts, and we'll be reading off some of your texts when we come back too. When we come back, I want to chat a little bit about the offensive line and the performance they had, particularly in that final drive with Hugh and Slick after Russ got sacked 4 times in the first half, not one sack in the second half allowed by the Seahawks offensive line. We'll talk about those adjustments as well as the defensive adjustments made by Ken Norton in that third quarter, that pivotal third quarter where the Seahawks outscored Minnesota 21-6 to get themselves back into this game and to get them the lead. We'll be back right after this 12th man post-game show right here on Sports Radio 950 KJR. If you want to give us a call, feel free. You can text us as well at 49451. The phone numbers is 206-286-9595 and 1-800-829-0950. Our 12-man postgame show sponsored by Steel. Steel dealerships are independently owned and operated with over 10,000 dealers nationwide. There's one near you, so support a small business in your community. Visit your local owned Steel dealer today. Real Steel, find yours. Dick, Slick, and Hugh back next on 950 KJR.
Hey, Slickhawk here. All right, so this is the portion of the 12th Man post-game show that them on the radio, they don't get to hear, okay? While they're listening to commercials, you and I, we get to interact a little bit more about this 5-0 Seahawks team, this awesome 27-26 win that they had over the Minnesota Vikings. Keep the comments coming down below. Comments, questions. I want to know, who is your player of the game? Is it Russell Wilson for having the final drive despite the interception? Is it somebody on the defense who made a big play there? Who is your player of the the game, let's get your text down below, and we'll read those. But I mean, you got a team tonight. Look, not only was it a tale of two halves, but Hugh mentioned it before. It was like 4 different football games, just like he said. There were all kind of chapters to this book, and each of them was so different. It's wild, though, that a game when nothing seemed like it was going right in the first half, they didn't seem like they had the energy, and then Dalvin Cook goes out, and you just see everybody perked up. They have a little bit of hope, and then they're able to get those quick scores, take the lead, and then Russell Wilson at the end of the game, when you had to have it, he marches them down the field. Also, how something else you could text about too, as we're bringing in the text. DK, we got another vote for DK there as far as who's going to be your player of the game. Russell Wilson, how can you go against the guy, right? All the MVP talk is there for a reason, and even when he struggles in the first half, even when he throws a pick toward the end of the game, you know if you give him one last chance, he's going to get it for you. He's going to march down the field and do it. When they lined up for 4th and 1, what were you feeling? Let's get that text as well, because me personally, and maybe this is just my belief in Russell Wilson, I wanted them to kick the field goal. They hadn't made a stop really on 4th down or anything like that, any short yardage plays against that rushing attack all day long, it seemed like. The whole defense for not giving up. I like that, Robert. Just give it to them all. They hadn't been making those plays, but I know the quarterback that we have. The KJ pick was huge, absolutely. So the fact that they were going to possibly line up for a field goal to go up 8, I had confidence in Russell Wilson. I'm like, go ahead, do that. He'll march him down, and he'll get the 2-point conversion, and we'll take care of you guys in overtime. They go for it. Luckily, the stop comes in. Another vote for KJ Wright, a man again tonight. I mean, you could have made a case last week for KJ being the player of the game. Another vote for KJ. Thank you, Lamont. He is playing out of his mind. He's been all over the place. I felt good that he was finally able to pluck one out of the air tonight. He had like 3 in both his hands last week, but this one he was able to get an interception. Another vote, Keith, for KJ Wright. Dan Quinn. Yeah, well, that's a question, isn't it? Ken Norton Jr., a lot of people asking about his job security and wanting to bring in Dan Quinn. I just don't see a lot of turnover mid-season for a team that's 5-0. It's a result-based league, and the results right now are the Seahawks haven't lost a game going into their bye, which is pretty rare for the rest of the league. So rare for the Seahawks that it's never happened before. I like that vote for Chris Carson, because no matter what the situation is, you give Chris Carson the ball and you know he's going to give you production. I was screaming at my TV once they were 1st and goal on that last drive and Travis Homer was in the game, screaming at the TV, put in Carson. I understand that Homer's in your 2-minute package, but once you're 1st and goal, I mean, you're down there. I think Chris Carson can do a lot more for you down there. You had a timeout. You were on the 6-yard line. You could even pop a run if you wanted to and take the timeout if you didn't get in. But I just felt like Chris Carson was definitely the guy to go to there. Ben don't break. At the last moment, they didn't break. That's right. Chris Carson. Absolutely. Another vote for Chris Carson. KJ has been our best defender this year. It's hard to argue against that. Jamal Adams had a game. And then he had another one was kind of nice, and then he's been hurt. Think about the other defenders. Bobby's had a nice season, but KJ has shown up in and out. He was coming into this game. You know, we talk about keys and who's going to be your key to the game. KJ Wright was mine. How is he going to play Dalvin Cook and minimize his effectiveness? And while Dalvin Cook made a lot of plays tonight, it was KJ Wright all over the place that kept the Seahawks in it defensively so that the offense could finally come around and make it happen. DK is better than Julio Jones. I don't know if DK right now is better than Julio Jones at his peak, at his apex, but maybe this version of Julio, I mean, he's not even playing, right? He didn't play today. So I'll give you that. DK played today and Julio didn't. The defense will come together once Adams, Brooks and Green are back in the rotation. That's the thing to remember. This is a great time to have a bye. Usually I don't like it this early, but the fact that you're going to get a little bit healthier, you're going to get Jamal Adams coming back from that groin, you're going to get the rookie Jordan Brooks coming back. I like all that. All right, now I'm going to throw it right back to Dick Fan and Hugh Millen now. 12th Man Postgame Show, Sports Radio 950 KJR.
Now back to the 12th Man Postgame Show, powered by Real Steel. Find yours. Visit your local steel dealer today on your home for the 12th Man and the NFL. Seattle Sports Radio 950, KJR.
Tell you what, Slick did a hell of a job during that break, man. I mean, he went nonstop for 5 minutes. I encourage anybody to get on our Facebook page and listen to Slick during the breaks. My goodness, man, he got a lot of info in the last 5 minutes or so. Dick Fade, Slick Hawk, Hugh Breed, Love Millen. Another celebratory mood we are in after another just unbelievable high blood pressure game by the Seattle Seahawks, but they are 5-0. They are now 21-3 in primetime home games under Pete Carroll, and they have won their last 10 games prior to a bye week. So they're going into their bye. They are going to get a W under Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson. Hugh, I want to get to the offensive line with you because obviously they were swarmed under in that first half. Russell Wilson had a tough time breathing there. And then on that last drive, I really thought that they stepped up, gave Russ the time that he needed. So maybe just talk about some of the adjustments that Seattle was able to make with that O-line to give Russ a little more time there in the second half.
Well, first of all, I think that the line was doing better than maybe you think they were doing. I think there was a number of times where Wilson had enough time. There was a few times where he was under siege, but I thought Wilson was awful in the first half. I thought if Geno Smith was playing and all other variables were exactly the same, you just said that's a flat football team, and oh goodness, this quarterback is just not making plays. He was hesitant, holding the ball. There was opportunities. There's one time where Collinsworth is talking about how everybody's covered. Baloney. Chris Carson's open right there in the alley checkdown area, and there's nobody even within the screen. You know, these commentators, sometimes they really tend to cover for the elite players. So I think just Russell's performance in the first half was far from Russell-like. As far as the adjustments they made, they're playing a lot of what's called cover four. There's a 4-deep defense by Minnesota, 2 safeties high. So don't be confused when you hear those 2 safeties high. It's cover 2. There's difference between cover 2 and cover 4. Yes, they both have 2 safeties high, and there's a middle pipe seam that you can hit there. But the difference is the corners are deep in cover 4, and they're in a flat zone in cover 2. And so what happens then, if you do the math, if you're thinking this through, you go, wait a minute, if they got 4 guys deep and a standard rush is 4 guys, that means they only have 3 guys underneath. Well, if you only got 3 guys underneath, how can you spot drop and get to zones in those underneath zones, those shallow zones? And the answer is you can't. You have to play man-to-man concepts within a zone. You have to man up, particularly the inside receivers, the tight ends, the running backs, the slot receivers. You got to man up with those. So I thought Seattle didn't do a good job of using their cover 4 beaters and attacking. And one of them, frankly, was Disley on that wheel route. And so they got to a touchdown on that. The sail route to the deep deep out route to Greg Olsen over by the sideline. That's a cover 4 beater. So they got to some of the things that are traditionally basically what you do in that route. There's 2 things you want to do. You either want to try and get the post route by the widest receiver because and you have to have a concept to hold the safeties down low so you get one-on-one on the post. But if everybody's deep, then you've got to work the underneath parts of that and attack those 3 defenders that are near the line of scrimmage, because they have to play not spot drops, but man-to-man concepts within a zone where they kind of match up. It's like a matchup zone in basketball. You got to man up based on the release of the different inside receivers, primarily the running backs, the tight ends, the slots. And so Seattle was just able to get to some cover 4 beaters.
I'm glad you used that basketball analogy, because I tweeted out a basketball analogy at the end of the first half of this game. And, obviously, when I see pace of play and the different types of pace of play in football, my brain automatically takes me back to basketball and to coaching. And the way in basketball that you beat a high-flying, high-scoring, high-pace football team is to do the exact opposite. I mean, in basketball, you play Wisconsin Badger basketball, right? You limit the number of possessions. You walk it up the floor. You
grind
make
it out.
the opposition, just arduous to try to score a basket, and you try to win 59-57. And I thought Mike Zimmer did a brilliant job of Wisconsin Badger basketball on the Seahawks in the first half. It was smash mouth. It was 4 yards and a cloud of rubber pellets. It was Dalvin Cook left, Dalvin Cook right, occasional play action, just controlling the clock. Is that a game plan that you think potentially could, maybe be a downfall of this Seahawks football team in the future this year?
Yes, it can be with a elite running back, which Cook is. He came in leading the league in all kinds of stats, like run after yards after contact, yards overall. I mean, this guy's an elite running back, top 5 running back in the NFL. He's got a lot of speed, and we talked at the end of the week in our breakdown shows about how Seattle, with their front that they've been running, that double eagle where they have not 2 but 3 guys in a little tiny box. If you draw a box from the outside shoulder of each guard, and so you got and that box is comprised of the 2 guards in the center. In Seattle's customary fronts throughout the years, and the best years under Carroll, they've only had 2 guys in that little box. Now they're putting 3 to really gum up the inside run and to try and spill the running game. Well, we talked, hey, they're vulnerable to the stretch play, and that's that wide zone where they get everything moving and it might not hit to the wide zone, but it might turn up north and south. But the defense has to be more lateral, and as I said, because of Seattle's alignment, they have 1 more guy in the middle, and when you're running away from those guys, it just becomes a numbers game. It becomes an angle blocking game because the tackle can block down before he goes up to the second level. So, I think that they're vulnerable to the stretch play. Even when Cook was out, they were still getting mileage on that stretch. When the Vikings turned it around, at what I'll describe, because I think we're all in agreement about this game, in game number 3 that we saw tonight, they reestablished that outside zone without Cook. And 25, whatever his name is, but 25 and 23, Madison, So it's absolutely a concern. And now I also think that the whole reason why you drafted Brooks is to get some team speed there. And so I think that in theory, we haven't seen enough of him to say that he can be a game changer, but it's worth a discussion if we're having a beer tonight about whether or not he could, because he has the physicality and he has the speed. And so I think that to get a little bit more lateral quickness on those stretch plays could help the Seahawks.
Slick, it looked like a different type of energy for that Seahawks defense there to start the third quarter than we saw in the whole first half. Just talk about the energy impact that you saw there that got the 3 quick touchdowns.
Well, they just had to have it. I mean, they came out so flat, and everything that the Vikings were doing offensively played right into that. I mean, it was just slow. First of all, the speed of the first half, it was like an hour and 5 minutes, something like that. I've never seen a half of football like that, but that's just what it was. I mean, it was just grind it out, run it down your throat. They didn't have an answer for it. A, that's going to tire you out, and B, that's just demoralizing. That's no fun. I mean, let's keep in mind they're at their job, they're professional athletes, but they also want to be out there having fun too. It's not fun, having guys run it down your throat all day long. So I think that all kind of played into it. But they come out, like we mentioned, Dalvin Cook comes up lame with the groin, and then something snapped in them. Okay, we got some hope. Now things are going our way. They make a play and then another play, and we know how that can snowball momentum-wise, and that absolutely did. And that energy showed up. It was electric throughout the entire, 46 or however many are out there. And so, that was key. You had to have that in order to be able to come back in this game, and they did.
And Hugh, you got to have the energy, but you also have to have the adjustments as well. And we were talking right before you jumped on how Collinsworth commented on that Dalvin Cook injury play where Ryan Neal knocked him out of bounds, that the whole, after that 3 and out, the Hawks were high-fiving on the sidelines. They were pumping their fists. They were running out in the field, exhorting their defense, saying, hey, way to go, way to go. And he made that comment that it just felt in the building like the momentum had shifted that quickly. But obviously, there were some adjustments too. I mean, Ken Norton did some things at halftime. So talk about some of those adjustments, because it did look like a completely different, more aggressive Seahawk defense in that third quarter.
Well, they did blitz more often, and they had been very reticent to blitz in the first half. And so they did. When you blitz the way Seattle did in that third quarter, you're doing it for two reasons. Number one, you're saying, okay, us playing coverage hasn't been sufficient, so we want to, from a scheme standpoint, we want to win on scheme. Okay, that is a different analysis than, hey, what are we doing from the psychology? And the psychology is also, hey, we need to somehow establish and create a more aggressive tone. There's no doubt in my mind that there was a lot of discussion in that halftime. And Carroll's not the kind of guy that yell, but he had to have said words to the effect that we just weren't us.
Yeah.
Like that, we're just way too flat. That is not to be in an emotional no-show. Now I know they made a comment about the piped-in noise, the piped-in fan noise. They elected not to go with that.
Bring it down, and you could totally tell that on TV.
Yeah.
That does not sound like a normal. At least the other Seahawks home game was like. I mean, it sounded like a normal Seahawks home game with some din on the TV, and this was really low.
Well, normal in the sense that there was some crowd noise, but not as vocal. I think they had said that the league had capped it at 75 decibels. And I don't know. I think that they frequently get the Seattle crowd up in the 110s, 120s. So for them to be at just 75, but if there was a comment, look, I'm a little bit over my skis. I don't know exactly what happened there, but I did notice that Collinsworth and Michaels made the comment that they had elected to forego the crowd noise. And so even what the NFL is allowing and what they had done prior, based on the comment that I heard from the NBC telecast, it leads me to question, was there some type of mechanical change in terms of the noise that was implemented? But either way, what Carroll's going to say is, look, you guys are pros, man. You got Bobby Wagner in the center of your defense. You've got to find a way to be emotional. Now that's one of the reasons why you traded rather for Jamal Adams. And so that's a big blow because he's a emotional leader, but the leadership was sorely lacking, conspicuously lacking in the first half. The energy was just not Seahawks-like at all. They were emotional no-shows. I'll argue it all day long. And you saw a clear elevation of the intensity. So yeah, I think there was a schematic reason. I think there was an adjustment, just a mentality adjustment as well.
Pete Carroll spoke just a few minutes ago, and let's hear from the head coach of the Seahawks, who I'm sure he was right. I mean, he had to have had some sort of conversation, or maybe he just left it up to his leaders. Maybe Pete and Ken Norton just said, hey, Bobby, KJ, you go in there and talk to the rest of that defense. And sometimes that's better just to have the players, the captains of the team, talk to the rest of the defense. But let's hear from Pete Carroll here after the football game. A 1-point win for the Seattle Seahawks.
I have a regret. I have a major regret that the 12s weren't here to see that one, as well as all these other games that have been here in this season. It's so regrettable that you haven't been able to enjoy it, because you guys never would have gone home tonight. So just speaking to our fans, I hope you had a ball, with it at home and where you're doing it, and I hope you guys believe like our guys believe. That was an amazing game tonight, and it was hard and tough and started so poorly, but at halftime, I mean, obviously you saw what happened right as we came out. At halftime, our guys were clear that we could score a bunch of points and we could stop them, and all of a sudden the avalanche just hit, and then we got the ball away from them a couple times. We stopped them on 3 and out, and the offense just rock and rolled, and unfortunately they did a nice job and they got back ahead and gave our offense a chance to do it. And I can't express to people out there what it feels like when we're going on the field, even though it was 94 yards away in a minute 25 or whatever it was, and a timeout. It didn't matter, and you give Russ 4 downs and he's going to find a way to make a first down. And he's got some drama in him now. The 4th and 10 was huge, obviously. And then coming through on 4th down to win it with DK. But so many cool things happen. And again, as we're not playing the way we want to play on defense the whole game, but we make plays when we have to make them, and we make the stops when we have to make the stops, and they come up and they rise up. And it's a marvelous character that's going on with these guys, and we're having a blast. We're just getting started. This season's a million miles long here, but back in the old days at Trojan Land, all you ever wanted to be was undefeated at the bye. And so that still holds true. It's a great feeling. So we're going to take a little break and come back and try to get stronger. I have a regret. I have a major regret that the 12 weren't here to see that one, as well as all these other games that have been here in this season. It's so
It's the same regret we all share, Pete. We all share that regret. Yeah,
well, we've got a lot of questions in the Zoom world. Normally we get the in-person questions, but Pete Carroll, I mean, regretful. I mean, we'd be at Jimmy's on First right now, and there'd be like 500 Seahawk fans, and they're all getting absolutely sloshed. And
what would I be like right now, Dick Fain?
Right here, I'm looking around for my cocktail, and I don't have it, but hey, at least we got the win, 27-26. And go ahead, you.
Yeah, guys, a thought about that touchdown by Metcalf. We had talked back in August, and when things kind of started up again, about, hey, how can DK get better? And we brought up this statistic that a year ago there were 6 receivers that we can define as big receivers, the typical split end type outside receivers. You say, well, what is big? That's a relative term. Okay, so it was 6'2" or taller at the combine and 215 pounds or heavier at the combine. Okay, and from that delineation, there were 6 guys: Julio Jones, Devontae Parker, Mike Evans, Allen Robinson, Cortland Sutton, and Mike Williams. All of those guys were over 1,000 yards a year ago, and DK would be on that list as well. He'd be the 7th place with 900 yards again a year ago, and the average percentage of the time that those big receivers, who are primarily outside guys, the average of them playing in the slot was 24.4%. And for example, Julio Jones, 22% of his targets were from the slot. And so we thought, well, DK was just 8.2%. So of everybody above him, the lowest was 13%. And again, DK at 8%. And the average was 24.5%. So what's that all saying? We said, okay, in year 2, we can expect that they're going to start to move Metcalf around. He's not just going to be a split end. So with the game on the line, 4th down on the 5-yard line, guys, he was in the slot.
Yep.
And he's running a shallow cross, trying to be a man beater where you're getting some pick action and try and get a rub. They didn't get the rub that they would have liked, so it was great coverage. But I think it speaks to, I don't think a year ago, in fact, I would bet with almost all certainty that a year ago, had they been in this exact situation, they would have not put Metcalf in the slot. And so this is just the further workings. The great receivers, even though they're primarily outside receivers, they still really hurt a defense if they can come in 20-25% of the time and do damage inside. That's what DK did to win the game.
We're going to take a quick time out, and Slickcock will take you through the break here on our social media channels. I'm going to try something here before we on the social media channel, because you really got to check us out on Facebook. I'm going to share the screen here and show you a little something.
All right.
All right, I'm gonna see if I can do this. All right, and I'm just trying this. I'm trying. It's canceling my share screen. So instead, I'm just gonna tell you this win probability looks like the scariest roller coaster you have ever been on your life. All right, there was an 80 at the 13 minutes and 51 seconds left in the 3rd quarter. The Minnesota Vikings had an 88% chance of winning this game. Just 4 minutes later, the Seahawks had an 84% chance of winning the game. Wow. They went from basically 12% chance to win to 84% chance to win. And then Minnesota took it all the way back up to 90, where this highest they got. They got it to 97% with 2 minutes and 55 seconds left to go in the game. And then the Seahawks ended up winning the football game 27-26.
Oh, look at that.
Hey, how about that? Hey, we got it. Hey, you figured out how to do it. Nice work. Good job. Good job. I know Hugh's got to take off. I know Hugh's got to take off. One more thing for Hugh before we go, if you got to take off, Hugh. The role of KJ Wright. They mentioned during the broadcast numerous times. KJ's playing a different position now. He's much more active now. Give us kind of the nuts and bolts. Just dummy it down, football 101. What was KJ? What is KJ now? And why does it look so different?
Well, KJ was a will linebacker, a weak side linebacker. And based on the front that Seattle liked to play, the will linebacker would be off the ball, 4 or 5 yards, and an inside player. Okay. And so in their base front for many years, he would have the A gap in run support. Now, when you think of the gap is A is between the center and the guard, B is between the guard and the tackle. So you work outward, A, B, C, D, right? And he would have in his primary pass responsibility, he would be a hook zone defender, meaning the areas, if you got 4 guys underneath, the 2 middle guys would be your hook zone, and that would be near the hash marks. They'd be in the middle of the field. Okay, so his responsibilities, though certainly different than Bobby Wagner's, in those situations, based on that front, he would play more like a middle linebacker. And Seattle was eager to move him there after his rookie year because his length in the hook zone defense down in the goal line and what have you, it's like zone defense. Would you rather play zone with long arm guys or short arm guys? But he's a tall guy with long arms, and so that helped. So see, he was more like a middle linebacker. Now he's a Sam backer. He's more versatile. Sometimes he plays in the middle, depending on the personnel. If he's playing in regular, he's a Sam. But if they go in nickel, he goes back into his hook zone defender. So you have to talk about the personnel. But when he is on the line of scrimmage, he's got to handle a tight end, set the edge. And so he's more likely, instead of having an A or a B gap in runs responsibility, he's more likely to have the C or the D gap. So he has outside, set the edge type of responsibilities in the run game. And then in the pass game, he has the wide zones as opposed to the middle zones. And it's called a curl flat zone, but it's also called C/F/W if you're talking about the assignments, and I'm dummying it down, but he would have the curl. He would defend the curl first, which is the widest receiver running 12, 15, 17 yards and just doing like a button hook in the street. Mm-hmm. Then, and he would want to drop deep there. And then if the ball goes to the flat, he wants to react to the flat. So he doesn't want to defend the flat first. He would want, right. And he'd want to react to the flat. But if somebody runs a wheel on him, he's got to be able to defend the wheel. And but his buzz responsibility where he has the curl flat, oftentimes safeties and linebackers, depending again on the front, they'll get to that area from 4 yards off the line of scrimmage. A safety will be maybe even 6 yards off the line of scrimmage. If you look at that interception KJ had, he had to start at the line of scrimmage and then get all the way out and get underneath that. And so if you just say the alignment, it's more difficult to be an impact defender if you're trying to get to that zone from the line of scrimmage as opposed to 6-7 yards and a little bit wider like you can customarily see a safety. So that was tough duty, but he's playing the versatility, and he got wide and underneath there, and it was a horrible play by Cousins. Mm-hmm. And he allowed KJ to make the great play. But at any rate, it's really good to see him. They're asking more of him than ever before, but he's showing a complete, comprehensive 500 level, graduate level rather, understanding of the playbook, and he can plug and play into a lot of different assignment areas. And the last 2 weeks, he's been as impactful as anybody on the football team.
An unbelievable play, a memorable play. We'll have that on the Seahawk highlight reel at the end of the season, no question. And a play that engendered the reaction from my son was, "Oh my gosh, KJ just Odell'd him."
You got mossed.
He brought it down with one hand. Hey, Hugh, great job as always. Monday morning quarterback bright and early tomorrow morning. All right.
Hammer down.
You bet.
Okay.
That's Hugh Millen. Slickhawk will take you through the break. We'll be back here on 950 KJR for another half hour or so. It is the 12th man post-game show after a 1-point win for the Seattle Seahawks. We'll go through all the numbers. We'll take a look at some of the other games that happened in the NFL and give you an update look at what the NFC West standings look like in the final half hour of the show right here on Sports Radio 950 KJR.
All right, they had their time now. you and me, this is our time. A 5-0 Seahawks team after a 27-26 win, as heart-stopping as it gets. My buddy Justin, you just saw the comment down there a minute ago, he texted me, said there is something magical about this season. Yes, I see you with the medicinal relaxation aid. I got you. There is something that's starting to feel magical about this season. And, I mean, anytime, look, we see other teams have big starts like this, 5-0, 6-0, whatever it is, but it never gets to be our team, right? It's never been us. Even in the Super Bowl year, it hasn't been us. Well, this year, it's us. We get to be 5-0. And you want to talk about magical, okay? All right, here it is. It's just starting to feel like we might be bringing home another one of these. You know what I'm saying? Let's bring home another Super Bowl ring. I think it's time to get another Super Bowl. All this crappy year that we've been having with COVID, let's have a Super Bowl. I think that's going to make us feel pretty good about things. And I think we got the team to do it. Obviously, we have the quarterback to do it. I want to talk a little bit about the defense because, yes, it has been scary for this first 5 games of the season. The most encouraging thing I could say, though, about the defense is help is actually on the way. You saw the run defense. This is the first time it was actually tested all season long. Dalvin Cook, he was tearing them up. When he went out, Alexander Madison, he was having their way with the defense. But there is help on the way in terms of Snacks Harrison. They signed him. He'll be activated after the bye week. So for week 6, he'll be playing for the next game. And then there's more help because Jordan Brooks is going to come back. You're going to get Jamal Adams back, which is huge, obviously. And I think the biggest thing that we've gotten, I'm never going to call an injury a good thing, but the biggest thing that we've gotten out of all this is the emergence of Ryan Neal. And I think that, first of all, he is head and shoulders above anything Eleno Hill ever was. And I think the fact that you have Ryan Neal on this defense is going to allow you to do more really cool things with Jamal Adams because you can put that third safety and Neal out on the field. He's getting reps now. They're going to pay off then when you're wanting to run Jamal Adams out behind the backfield and do all that and to get the quarterback, get the running backs back there and everything. Having Ryan Neal, somebody who can actually play the position well, that's really going to help them out. I already mentioned the signing of Snacks Harrison and him coming into the fold after the bye week. That's going to be really good for helping out this defense too. And Jordan Brooks, his return, just having his speed out there alone is going to be helpful, and it's going to allow KJ to make some of the big plays that he's been making too. So there is help on the way. I know the defense has been scary, but they've been doing enough, and sometimes, boy, do I mean just enough for the offense to muster the point. But I mean, even tonight, a game like tonight where the first half offensively was an absolute zero, they still put 27 points on the board for the game. So that's, this is just the kind of offense that you have. They have quick strike capabilities. They're always going to be in it with that quarterback. You know the receivers, again, somewhat of a quiet night for Tyler Lockett. That's not going to be the norm. Tyler Lockett's going to get rolling too. And that's, it goes without saying, but that's when this team is at its best, is if you can get DK and Tyler Lockett working off of each other, getting each other open and getting the ball downfield. What tonight proved more than anything to me was that this is a team that can win any kind of way. Look, they got shut out in the first half. It was 13-0. They offensively weren't able to do anything. Defensively, they were getting the ball run right down their throat. And so they came out, they made adjustments, had an attitude adjustment as well, and came out firing in the second half. Yeah, you're going to have defenses that figure out how to play Russell Wilson, how to take away the deep ball. It happens to Patrick Mahomes. It happened for a lot of the Chiefs-Raiders game today. We're going to talk here in a few minutes about some of the other games around the NFL. The Chiefs lost today to the Raiders. Part of that was because they were taking away the deep pass. It happens to the best quarterbacks. You get a defense, they have a game plan. Hey, we're going to sell out on this. And that's what the Vikings did. The Seahawks were able to adjust at halftime, do some things differently. If you follow me on Twitter, I was yelling, I was screaming, hey, do something different. Use the tight end, try to find the seams, get some comebacks with DK, do whatever you have to do as far as that goes. But on the drives where they had to have it, they absolutely had it. And then they had they had a 2-play drive and a 1-play drive. So now defense helped set that up, the KJ interception and everything. But this is an offense that eventually they're going to get going, even if it's a slow start. The slow starts have been the norm in the past years. This season, that hasn't been the norm. But the fact that they were able to take that slow start, they knew what to do with it. They knew how to get themselves back in the game and get the ball back in Russell Wilson's hand one last time. That shows everything. The resilience of this team. It is a special team. It's a special year. And I couldn't be more jacked up to be 5-0. I've never been 5-0. This is a brand new feeling for me. So this is really cool. I think I hear the music, which means Dick Fane's coming back. So I'll throw back to Dick Fane as we wrap up the 12-man postgame show here on Sports Radio 950 KJR.
Now back to the 12th Man Postgame Show, powered by Real Steel. Find yours. Visit your local steel dealer today on your home for the 12th Man and the NFL. Seattle Sports Radio 950 KJR.
12-man post-game show. Dick Fane, Slickhawk with you. It's sponsored by Steel, Real Steel. Find yours. Visit your local steel dealer today. Some numbers from this one. The most important number, the final score, the Seahawks win 27-26 over the Minnesota Vikings to go to 5-0 for the first time ever. Russell Wilson now has 30 game-winning drives in his career. That passes Matthew Stafford for the most in the NFL since 2012. This is the 14th win by the Seahawks since the start of last season in one-possession games. No other team has more than 10. And I kind of want to go there with you, Slick, because I know you were talking about that. I recommend, again, those of you who listen on radio, also flip on your phone or flip on your computer and watch us on all of our 950 KJR social media channels, because you can see Slickhawk's lovely neon green jersey there that they won in today. You can
6-0 in action green, sir.
That's right, and all of his Hall of Fame jerseys behind you. You got the Largent, the Easley, the Kennedy, and the Jones back there. It's very, very good. My backdrop is not very fun because I'm actually at my mom's house in the guest bedroom because I'm with the family, and I was like, let's see, I could do what I did last week, and that's leave the party with 4 minutes left to go and drive home, or
that's fun.
Bring my equipment here to mom's house and just go into the guest bedroom and do the game. That way, I got to spend the last play of the game with my family and scream with them, because you'll remember a couple weeks ago, I was listening to them upstairs screaming when the Seahawks beat the New England Patriots. But the 14th win by the Seahawks in one-possession game since the start of last season. And a lot of people last year, particularly nationally, I think more so than locally, but a lot of people thought, it's fluky. Their record's fluky. Look at their point differential. But there is something special about this football team and their ability to win these types of games. There is nothing fluky about Russell Wilson winning close football games. We've seen it now for almost a decade. People need to understand that.
Analytics people want to say the numbers are going to bear out that that's not sustainable. What analytics and numbers don't measure is heart and will and what's inside you. Whatever that intestinal fortitude, that X factor, all that is, that can't be measured by numbers. All the Ben Baldwins in the world can't stack that up and say, hey, look at this. Sorry, buddy, that doesn't work. This is professional sports with real human beings, and these human beings are a collection of guys that have it within them to dig deep. We talked about it earlier in the show, to dig deep defensively when they need to make a play, when they have to hold them to half a yard instead of a full yard, up the middle when they haven't done it all day, and offensively when you have Russell Wilson, who will eventually have the record for most fourth quarter comebacks in the history of the league. I am absolutely convinced of that, on his way to the Hall of Fame. Just one of the many accolades that he'll have. You can't measure that. That Pete Carroll has assembled a team of guys with heart and want to, that will never, ever, ever quit.
And you just got to imagine what Minnesota is feeling like when Russell is marching down the field there, especially when he hits DK on that first fourth down conversion. You got to think, the Vikings have never beaten him, and they're going to have an opportunity. We finally got him where they want him.
We've got it. Yeah.
They couldn't get the final 4th and 1 stop, so they had to hand the ball back to number 3, and they're like, are you serious? Are you serious with this? He just completed a 4th and 10 to midfield, and we've got to now stop him from getting a touchdown with 1:20 left to go in the game. It's got to be a hopeless type of feeling, because You kind of know what's going to happen, and I kind of know what's going to happen. Hell, they almost scored 2 touchdowns. They got it in once that we thought was a touchdown, and then they had to do the do-over. It's like a horse, man. They had to make the first shot, and then they had to prove it, and they did.
Well, I think just the fact that Mike Zimmer keeps coming to Seattle and going back home to Minneapolis with a loss, I think that weighed in that decision down there do you kick the field goal and go up 8 and then have Russell Wilson march it down on you and then hopefully pray to God on one play you stop him on the 2-point conversion and then if not try to win in overtime, or do you go for the win right now and try to take it out of Russell Wilson's hand? I think that was absolutely in his mind. And then even when they do turn the ball over on downs, you have a team in the Seahawks that was 0 for 7 on 3rd down in this game and hadn't tried to convert a 4th down because all the punting they did on 4th down. So then they convert 2 huge, can't get bigger 4th down plays, the 4th and 10 to DK Metcalf, which, that was a great catch. That was not an easy catch. He had to catch it with both his forearms, pretty much bringing that in. And then I don't think there's any other way to describe it, but the ballsy catch that he had in the end zone to win the game. There was a lot going on. The fact that he had the drop 2 downs earlier, the fact that the defender was draped all over him, wet football, all of the factors happening right there. And for him to go muscle that thing in, guys ripping at it, trying to make him drop it once again, all that in the back of his head, not wanting to be the GOAT, wanting to turn that around and be the hero, all those factors. And he goes and converts that second 4th down on a day when they didn't convert 1 3rd down. And just, Mike Zimmer's got to be calling Roger Goodell and saying, can we just stop scheduling us against these guys? I don't want to do it anymore.
You made a great point during the radio break, but you were talking to the folks on the watching us on the social media channels that
I saved my best stuff for them.
That's good. No, it's very, very good. Man, that's why I want to bring it up on the radio so the folks that listen on radio can hear. They can win any type of way. They can win 38-31. They can win. It does 26-27 doesn't sound like a low scoring football game, but in 2020, it is a low scoring football game.
Yeah.
Like a low scoring football game. It just felt like, well, it did get in the under, from the Vegas under it hit, but it felt like a lower scoring smash mouth football game. And I'm thinking, my gosh, this team scored no points in the first half. Is this the lowest scoring game they're going to have all season long? If you can hold them to 0 in a half, I doubt that's going to happen again all season long. Is there even going to be a game where they score less than 27 points?
I don't know. I don't think so. The way they're going, and we've seen a pretty big sample size now, 5 games. It's just interesting because the game they play, and you'll have to remind me of the final score, but the game they played against the Packers in the playoffs, it was similarly, they didn't score in the first half in that game, but they didn't have, even though it was the same players, it was a different mentality, I think, in terms of how they're going to play offensive football. And so
23 was that game.
Yeah. And so they weren't striking the way they're striking now. And so, those extra 4 points, I think, would have made, pretty much all the difference when they get 27 tonight and could have been more.
The hero, DK Metcalf, with the drop and then the catch. We've got Pete Carroll. After the ball game, you did not hear this earlier. This is a separate cut. Pete Carroll talks about DK's mental makeup right now after the game.
It's been about hard work, commitment to getting right so that he can have the confidence that it takes to make those kinds of plays. He totally believes in himself, and he's building up a reservoir of reasons why he should, and he continues to make things happen. He's got a great partner in Russ who believes in him and trust him, which also adds. We all need to be supported, and DK's getting a lot of support from us because we know how good he is too. And so as he continues to log these experiences and put them in his back pocket, he gets stronger and stronger and stronger. He's just going to keep getting better. That was a marvelous game for him tonight.
Slick, you also mentioned on the social media channels that there was a texter that said there's something special about this team. And we've always known that there's something special about this quarterback. I don't think there's any question about that. And I think there's also something special about this head coach, because this head coach just finds a way to, no matter how bad his team looks, he finds a way to keep his team in the football game. And, but this may be all roads just kind of aligning to Seattle Seahawks in 2020 after a few years of, let's call it transition. It's not rebuilding, but it was certainly transition going from the LOB-dominated Seahawks to now the whatever you want to call this aerial assault that we're seeing by the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, I don't think we're there yet. I don't see an elite football team that's polished, but I don't really see any other team in the NFL that's an elite polished football team either. There's plenty unpolished about the Kansas City Chiefs, man. I mean, they trailed most of the game against the Chargers. They looked bad against the Patriots and had some very fortuitous bounces in that game. And then they looked bad for most of the game here against the Raiders. So I would say on par, the Seahawks have looked better over the first 5 games than the champions have. Packers look pretty scary, but you mentioned during the break that this isn't the final Seahawk product for 2020 because they're getting some additions as well.
You're going to be hard-pressed to find a polished, ready-made championship football team that just on October anything. I mean, until you get to the second half of the season, it's just – in any season, you're not going to have that. Now factor in no OTAs. Now factor in a shorter training camp and all that. It's just not realistic to expect that. But what you do have here is a veteran group who is led by tremendous leaders, some of the best leaders in the NFL on both sides of the football and in the coaching staff. And so, I mean, that kind of bears out in the end. I think that when you look at the NFC and the landscape of the NFC, you have it's a 2-team conference right now in terms of who can compete for the Super Bowl from this conference. You have the Seahawks and you have the Packers.
It looks like the Seahawks and the Packers. Right?
That's it. That's it.
It really does. Let's hear from Russell Wilson. We have a few minutes of Russ, just another magical down the stretch performance by Russell Wilson after, and Hugh rightfully said, just a very, very poor first half performance from number 3, but he got it turned around and led the Seahawks on that 14-play, 90-plus yard drive and got the touchdown in the closing seconds of this one.
I feel like Sue Bird in the clutch, man, I felt like because our defense made that unbelievable stop on 4th and 1, they just picked me up in that situation. We kept believing. I was cheering them on. Hey, we kept believing everybody. Sure enough, 4th and 1, we get a huge, amazing stop by the defense. And sure enough, okay, here we go. Let's go win the game. And we just kept battling. DK makes a great play on 4th and 10. Then we keep battling, keep going up and down the field. We had a couple of chances at the end zone early on there. We could have scored on those, but came down to a clutch moment. And, 15 seconds left. And I just saw DK run across the field and just try to zoom it in there to him. And tight window. He just made an unbelievable catch, unbelievable play. Offensive line blocked extremely well in that position. And just it was a special time, special moment for us right there.
Curtis Crabtree.
Yeah, Russ, for you guys to be 0 for 7 on 3rd down throughout the game and then need to come through with 2 big 4th down conversions on the last drive there, how'd you come up with those 2 plays and obviously having your backs against the wall to make those plays in that moment?
Yeah, I think in the first half, the reality is we didn't have the ball. We had the ball a few times. We were in 3rd in some long situations. They stopped a screen. I think they stopped a couple of plays early on, and then we had a sack, which was on me. And then so we were trying to get the ball down the field. We almost had Tyler potentially on one play, and so they just they had possession of the ball for a long time in the first half. So we didn't get discouraged. The score was just 13-0. That's all I kept telling the guys. We stayed neutral. We got the ball back second half, and we were lights out in those 3 possessions in a row. I think it was 3 possessions in a row maybe. And it was just really special how we stayed the course. Guys kept believing, and Disley got back involved. It was good to see Dis back, and DK made a great catch. Then Chris Carson, has a sweet run for a touchdown, just kind of bulldozers over everybody. And next thing you know, it's a new game, and that fast within, a minute and 50 seconds, probably, who knows? And so that was a testament to our defense getting turnovers, making plays, causing havoc on the defense and, on their offense, I should say. And it was really special that we were able to just keep believing. And that's why I've always told you guys that to have no doubt, just keep believing, something great's going to happen.
That's Russell Wilson. Just another magical performance. Russell's numbers are not going to blow anyone away as far as what he normally does, but you'll take the 3 touchdowns. There's no question about that. I don't think at halftime a lot of people figured he'd end up with 3 touchdowns in the game, but Russ, 20 of 32, 217 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception on a bad ball to Chris Carson down the sidelines. But still, I mean, Slickhawk, we've gotten to the point with our quarterback that we look at 100.6 rating and we're like, what was wrong with Russell Wilson today?
What happened there?
I mean, that is where we've gotten with Russell Wilson, especially in 2020, because here are his passer ratings this season. 143, 132, 130, 112, 100.6. So now the bad news is they've come down each and every game, but when you start at 142, they're not going up. You got to kind of feel that they're probably going to level out somewhere. Now, I don't think most of the games will see Russ at 100. I think most of the games will see Russ in that 110 to 120 probably range. But, if this is as bad as it gets for Russell Wilson in 2020, I think that MVP is locked up. And I think that the Seahawks at minimum are, going to win 13 games this year and get that 1 seed in the NFC.
Well, what was interesting was while the offense wasn't doing anything and you were frustrated with that and with maybe a little bit with Russell Wilson, he was still, I think first half 7 for 7, and he started the game. He set a personal record, most consecutive passes completed, 15 for 15 as he goes along. So it's even when he and the offense are failing, he's still being efficient with the football. Now you can say, okay, well, he took some sacks that he shouldn't have, and he wasn't getting the protection that he necessarily needed to, or wasn't hitting guys down the field. I just think they were bringing a defense that he hadn't seen yet this year. They had a good defensive approach. It took some a bit to adjust to play calling wise, but they were able to fight through that. And I'm going to. Not a lot of times this year. I don't think this is going to come out of my mouth. Maybe it will. Maybe we'll be surprised down the road. But I do want to credit the defense for holding in the first half, holding the Vikings to 2 field goals and a touchdown, 13 points. It wasn't so bad. They were able to come out at halftime and not be in a 20-0 hole or something like that. They did enough that the offense was able to get going. So, in the past, when you had a better defense, you could take a while to get going. This isn't that defense, and so it's a little harder. But they did enough to where Seattle, they were able to get back into it offensively.
Well, you're right, and we see that in all sports, especially the big 3, where, you get, like, let's say you got a pitcher that's just getting rocked, but you look up at the scoreboard, and when he's pulled in the 5th inning, you're like, we're only down 3-1 right now.
Yeah.
It just felt like he was just getting hammered for 5 innings, but we're only down 3-1. That's kind of how it felt with the Seahawks today. You're at halftime, and I'm thinking, that's about as bad as we can play on both sides of the ball, and we're only down 13 points, and we got the ball coming out. So. Right. I didn't feel really hopeless. I know there was a lot of hopelessness out there in the Twitterverse, but that's where hopelessness lives, in the Twitterverse. They found a way to get it done. I want to spend the last few minutes of the show here, Slick, talking a little bit about the rest of the NFL, because a very, very interesting day today in the NFL. Going to give some props to Tristan Cockcroft from ESPN, their fantasy guy. You'll love this one, Slick. Most fantasy points by a quarterback in his team's first 5 games of a season. Peyton Manning, 2013, Culpepper, 2004, Russell Wilson, 2020, the third points by a quarterback in the first 5 games of the season. 147.4 fantasy points for Russell Wilson, who was like a 5th or 6th round draft pick in most fantasy drafts.
I'm sure, probably even later, to be honest.
Not bad at all. So the rest of the NFL. We'll take a look at, we mentioned the Chiefs a little bit earlier today. Patrick Mahomes looked rough in this one. He looked rough in the New England game too. So Patrick is not playing great football right now. And the Raiders put 40 up on the Kansas City Chiefs and got the win 40-32 in that one. It'll be interesting to see if the Chiefs truly are the favorite to win the AFC, or if they were just peaking at the right time when they blew out the Baltimore Ravens a couple of weeks ago, and the Ravens actually be the cream of the crop in the AFC, or maybe someone else like the Pittsburgh Steelers, who got the Cross-state rivalry win over the Eagles today, 38-29. They are undefeated. The Steelers at 4-0 in that one. To the NFC West, the Rams beat Washington today, no problem, 30-10. I mean, maybe the Rams just keep winning. I mean, I know they're not beating great teams, but you got to give them credit for winning. And this looks like a team, Slick, that is at least playoff bound.
Yeah.
I'm still not sold that they're deep playoff bound, but at least, I mean, they're racking up enough wins right now where, I mean, 9-7 is probably going to get in as a wild card now with the new playoff rules. So they're only 5 wins away from 9.
No, they strike me as a wild card team. They always did. That's what I thought would happen with this Rams team. They're what you say? They're 4-1 now. Yep. I mean, they're a 9-7, 10-6 football team is what they are. Okay. So and that's gonna. I mean, the season will dictate that.
All right. Well, hopefully the Seahawks can take care of them twice this year, as we have yet to play a division opponent. The really sad news, and the news is going to be talked about more than anything else in the NFL world and probably in the sports world all week long, is the Dallas Cowboys losing their starting quarterback Dak Prescott to that just gruesome looking ankle injury, both broken and dislocated. Just a terrible sight there. But the Cowboys do rally behind just enough from Andy Dalton. I mean, I guess spend some money on a backup quarterback. And, it's funny because I tweeted out today, I was like, hey, you know what? They got a pretty damn good backup here. Don't sleep on the Dallas Cowboys. And Andy Dalton did a pretty nice job. 9 of 11, 111 yards, threw a big-time ball to get them into field goal range at the end of the football game, and they got that win. And in that division, I mean, they're in first place at 2-3. You talk about 9-7 making a wild card. 7-9 might make the playoffs in the NFC East.
At the time when they brought in Andy Dalton, of course, they were right in the middle of their contract dispute with Dak Prescott. And I thought, okay, well, they're bringing in Andy Dalton, if nothing else, just to kind of put a little more pressure on Prescott to sign the deal that they had on the table. And now it turns out it could be a playoff saving move that they have. You've got Andy Dalton, who I think made 6 playoffs in a row, something like that. So certainly a veteran that can get it done with the weapons that they have. I think Andy Dalton certainly can be enough to win that division.
Moment of silence for our old friend Niner Nate Slickhawk. Bow your heads.
I refuse.
The 49ers. By the Miami Dolphins, 43-17. The team that the Seahawks went on the road to in 90-degree weather and really had not too much problem at all coming out with a win. Flies 3,000 miles to the West Coast to a stadium that's always empty, whether you can go to the game or not go to the game, and beats the 49ers by 26 points. Slickhawk, I mean, I just kind of thought, all right, Niners struggling with the injuries. They're going to get a lot of those guys back. By the end of the season, they'll at least be putting heat. I don't think they'll catch Seattle, but I thought before this game, okay, they righted the ship last week. I think they'll, just kind of put enough pressure on Seattle they lost to the Eagles last week. When they got to 2-1, I thought, hey, they'll win maybe 11 when they were 2-1, put pressure on Seattle to make sure they got to win 12 to win the division. But this team doesn't look like a team that's winning 11 games, whether they get guys back or not.
When we were the week leading up to the Dolphins game, I told y'all the Dolphins could score some points, but it wasn't on us.
Right.
Watch out for the Dolphins. Oh, send them to 2-3, and it was so beautiful. It was so glorious because they get Jimmy Garoppolo back today. They felt like everything was right with the world, and then that world crumbled beneath their Niner faithful feet, and it just it was delicious.
It was really outside the last Russell Wilson touchdown of to win the football game. It was truly my favorite time of the day. Garoppolo and his 1.4 QBR was standing on the sidelines, and they were spinning it in social media saying, yeah, we pulled him to protect him.
Right.
Protect him from what? Ridicule? Himself? I mean, what were you protecting him from? Kyle Shanahan, because He was just flat out terrible. The Niners were terrible. They are 2-3. They are in dead freaking last place in the NFC West. Here are your NFC West standings. Seattle at 5-0. At 4-1. The Arizona Cardinals sitting there at 3-2, and the Santa Clara 49ers, despite still having a positive scoring differential, still a +10, they are 2-3. The scoring differential for this division is plus 116, as all 4 football teams are in the positive. Obviously, there is no other division. In fact, the NFC East has all 4 in the negatives. Is there any that even have 3 in the positives? Let's see. The AFC East had 3 in the positive, and the AFC North had 3 in the positive. The rest of the divisions in football either have 2, 3, or 4 negative point differential football teams in their division. Well, that's going to do it for us. Slickhawk, some final thoughts on this one. The big win to get them to 5-0 for the first time, and now they get to relax, sit back, watch football basically every day, it seems like, for the next week. I mean, don't we have like football like every day, like Mondays and Tuesdays? Tuesdays and Sundays. There's just football everywhere that we can just sit back and watch and relax and not have to worry about a game for 2 weeks.
Well, that's my dream, is just have NFL football on every single day, and if only wishing made it so. Look, you've got a team that's 5-0 in the record book and 6-0 in Action Green. You got another green game coming up. You can just chalk that one up as a win right now. So that's 7 wins in the pocket. You're going to hit this bye. You're going to get healthy. You're going to get a little bit of a break here. Get Jordan Brooks back. Get Jamal Adams back. It gives you a week to get Damon Snacks Harrison in the fold and up to speed on what you're doing defensively. Things are looking up for this team. And I already, Dick, you may have been away earlier, but I already pulled it out once. I pulled out the championship ring because this is what I'm going after this year. Unless they are competing for this year, I'm saying NFC championship and a win in that game. Then right now, this season is a disappointment because that's the caliber of team that we have here. And that is my expectation now for this team because they are that good.
I think you're right. And I think they'll only get better because we know Pete Carroll teams just get better in November and December. Remember, I mean, we tweet this stat out every single year. I have to pull it out of my files because at the end of October, I tweet this stat out every year. Their September and October record under Pete Carroll versus their November and December record. It ain't close, man. They are way better in November and December. September and October is usually where this team chalks up their losses. And then they rattle off 7 out of 8 wins to close most seasons. So my goodness, if you can get to 6-2 by the end of this month, and then you're looking really, really good down the stretch because the schedule does get more difficult. There's no question about that for Seattle after the bye week. You've got at the Cardinals. That's going to be a bear. 49ers, rivalry game. I don't care how they're playing. That's going to be a bear. At the Bills, at the Rams, then the Cardinals, at the Eagles. Those are 6 really, really difficult games before you have that easy stretch against the Giants, Jets, and Washington. 6 really, really difficult games. Right now, I'm signing up out of court for 4-2. I really am. You get me to 9-2 after 11 games with the Giants, Jets, and Washington coming after that. I'm liking where this team is for the number 1 overall seed. But great stuff from you, Slickhawk. What do you got on the big show tomorrow morning?
Of course, you know what it is, the Monday morning quarterback. We start at 6 with Chuck and Buck in the morning at 7:20. Hugh Millen comes on. He'll be there from 7 to 10. Greg Bell comes on. All the news from this game, including more from Pete Carroll in his post game at 7 o'clock with Greg Bell from the Tacoma News Tribune. And then the coach Mike Holmgren at 9 o'clock, the entire 9 o'clock hour to break this down and talk about your 5-0 Seahawks.
Slickhawk, I'm only going to promote one thing from Mayan's Shopty show tomorrow. Just one thing. That's all. We'll have a lot of great stuff from all the way. I'm only going to promote one thing.
Opponent audio recap
with Paul Allen.
Oh, man.
How beautiful will that be? End of the 3 o'clock hour. Make sure you are listening to 950 KJR to hear, I feel like, the best play-by-play man in local radio in America who just gets high when things are going well and get downright pissed off when his team is not playing well. And I can't wait to hear what that final drive, that final touchdown sounds like in the dulcet tones of PA. That's going to be beautiful.
This isn't Detroit, man. This is the Super Bowl.
Good Lord. 3 o'clock hour. Join me in Softy tomorrow. Join Slick bright and early at 6 o'clock in the morning. We'll talk to you. Thanks to Chris Kidd, Kevin Shockey, and Hugh Breedlove Millen. This has been a presentation of Sports Radio 950 KJR.